I chose for my life cycle assessment is Good Soap. It's made by a company called Alafia, and it's sold exclusively at Whole Foods. The company Alafia was created by an American woman and an African man who met while she was on the Peace Corps in Africa. They came back to the U.S. and started a company that would help alleviate poverty in Africa, his home country. They formed a co-op, a cooperative of women called the Alafia Cooperative, and it employs over 300 women, and they make 2 of the main ingredients in the soap. Alafia not only works with these women in fair trade, they also donate a lot of money, a whole bunch of money, to all kinds of community empowerment projects in healthcare, reforestation, schools, and eyeglass collection. A little bit on the history of soap. The first known soap dates all the way back to 2800 BC, back in ancient Sumeria, when there were urns found that had inscribed a recipe for soap. That recipe was basically ash and rendered animal fat. It's crazy to think that ashes and rendered animal fat would make something like soap, but it did. And today, ingredients just like that are still used in soap. But back then, they weren't using the soap to clean their bodies, they were using it to clean their textiles, and that went on for quite a while, even into the time of the early Greeks and Romans. And then baths did become very popular, the Greek and Roman baths. However, they still were only cleaning their clothes. When they got in the baths, they were using oil, not soap, to clean themselves with. Kind of interesting. But there were places where cleanliness was definitely valued, and then there were times when it wasn't. In the Middle Ages, it was not valued and probably had something to do with the Black Plague. Still, soap was used, and there were pockets of places where people were using it to clean themselves and also to use it to clean textiles. In 79 AD, when Pompeii exploded, we know they were using soap and manufacturing soap because there was a soap works place that was found in the ash there. Also, an important place in the history of soap making is actually Aleppo. They are still famous for the Aleppo soap. And Aleppo was on the Silk Road, which was a trade route. And around the time of the Crusades, the Aleppo soap started to really get around the world. And once it was introduced to Europe, the Europeans said, we gotta make this stuff. So in Europe, the French made the Castile, and in Italy and in Spain, there was so much olive oil that was really nice for soap, that soap really became a European luxury item. And yes, it was heavily taxed. So not everybody could really get their hands on it unless they wanted to make it with these ingredients in their backyard, and they could do that. Soap didn't get into the New World until about 1608, when the soap makers from Europe started to arrive. It was really still largely a household backyard chore and also a luxury item to buy. It wasn't until about the 1700s that the manufacture of soap started to change. It was the discoveries of some of these people who changed the way soap is made by discovering how to create lye and sodium hydroxide, and those types of ingredients are still used today. This was around the time of the Industrial Revolution, and this is pretty much how we're still making soap today. Let's talk a little bit about the raw materials that went into the bar of good soap. The first 2 are shea butter and coconut oil. Those come from Togo, Africa, and are handcrafted by the Women's Cooperative. And the prices they pay for these ingredients are very high and fair trade. And the women in this cooperative, part of the reason the prices are so high is the women in this cooperative have salaries and benefits. 2 of the other ingredients are the sodium palm oils. Salts have always been used for a very long time in soap ingredients. I was concerned about the palm oil because sometimes it's not sustainably harvested, but Goods Palm oil is sustainably harvested. It is certified sustainable. And these ingredients are certified fair trade. Other ingredients are lavender oil, goat milk powder, glycerin, and water. I talked to somebody from the company, and these are definitely from Africa, and they couldn't tell me where they sourced anything else from, but they said they try to source everything domestically after the Africa. However, the palm oil probably is not coming from the US either. Sodium citrate, iron oxide, and titanium dioxide. These are both manufactured, and this is mined from all over the world. There's all kinds of mines where that white color comes from. It's used in a lot of products. So a little bit about the energy use and the inputs and the transportation and everything that goes into getting these raw materials into a bar of soap. This is clearly, as you can tell by now, an international product. And some of these ingredients are coming from Africa across the ocean, either to a port on the East Coast or through the Panama Canal and to the West Coast. I'm not really sure. But either way, it involves the shipping industry. The factory is in Washington State. And who knows where all of these other ingredients are coming from, but they're probably crossing the United States via the trucking industry and possibly rail. All of this is using fossil fuels. Once the soap is made, too, it needs to be trucked to the store. In my case, across the country again, to the East Coast. In terms of the fossil fuels, the shipping I looked into, an average container ship uses 3,500 gallons of fuel a day. It takes 10 days to do a transatlantic trip. That's 35,000 gallons of fuel a day to get the raw ingredients over there, but they split it with lots of other products, so it really comes out to like 0.0025 gallons of gas to get the raw ingredients. Still, 35,000 in 10 days gallons of gas is a lot, and it seems crazy. A little bit more research showed me that 25% of the oil demands in the world are used in the transportation industry. Cars, trucks, planes, trains, and automobiles. The shipping industry, of that 25%, only uses 7% of it. Land transportation uses 85%. So still, even though that number is really, really big, it's actually one of the most fuel efficient ways to move product around the globe. Okay, so for the use and the disposal of soap, it's been made at the factory and it's been trucked to Whole Foods, where I then take it in my car from Whole Foods to my house, and I use the good soap to wash up. There's no package to dispose of because good soap is marketed without packaging. It's just on tables without any kind of packaging, which I really like. So in terms of disposal, the way that soap is disposed of is through use, and the particles are washed away with the water. I researched all of the ingredients and found them all to be biodegradable, so there's no environmental impact of this soap's end of life. However, there is an environmental impact of using hot water to wash up, which is something that we humans in our homes can be careful of. Will I continue to buy good soap? I think because it's fair trade and there are a lot of great causes, I will continue to buy good soap. But what I learned from this is also, because of the use of the fossil fuels and global trade, I might like to make my own soap locally. I invite you to try the same.